is going to be hosted by a guest moderator, Mary Allison, who I'll introduce in a second. And then our speaker is Paula Kranz, who, if you've not heard Paula speak before, just an amazing person, really cool background. But I'm not going to spoil the introduction that Mary Allison's going to do, but I'll do Mary Allison's introduction here really quickly as our guest moderator. So Mary Allison by trade is a commercial real estate broker with Blanq Real Estate, specializing in small business owners and investors, either lease or purchase their office, retail, industrial space, kind of the whole gambit. But she's also, importantly, the founder of a Work It Girl podcast. So if you haven't checked out her podcast, you really need to do that. It's focused on the mission of inspiring women to share stories, experiences, female leaders, creators, entrepreneurs, and Paula certainly fits that category. So Mary Allison, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and turn on your camera and come in on stage here. And when you do, then I will bow out and turn it over to you and allow you and Paula to take off from there. So. Let's see, Mary Allison, are you there? There we go. Remo's a little slow. You got to press the button really hard, and then it kind of freezes. So yeah, we'll let you take it away from here. But thank you so much for being our guest moderator tonight. And I know this is going to be a fantastic session. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. Paula, do we have you on here as well?
I am here. You're right, Dan.
Hello. Well, Paula, if anyone on the call knows Paula, it's going to be difficult for me to condense your bio here, but I'll do my best. So Paula Kranz is a 22-year U.S. intelligence officer with leadership experience in over 70 countries around the globe. After her military service, Paula pursued graduate studies, became a New York Times bestselling author, and served as a research associate at Harvard University's leadership. She also served at that time as the deputy director of the Fletcher School's Counterterrorism Center. In addition to that, Paula is deeply committed to public service and volunteerism and has been or is actively involved in leadership and participation in organizations such as Women Executives, Charlotte American Heart Association's Go Red for Women, Girls in STEM campaign, Women in International Security, Carolina Freedom Foundation, Association of the U.S. Army European Division, and is an advisor at large for a Charlotte-based anti-human trafficking workforce development nonprofit. Currently, and what we're going to talk a lot about this evening, Paula is CEO and founder of Medi-XR, a healthcare consulting firm advising health systems on augmented reality, virtual reality, AI modeling, virtual care expansion, and digital health solutions. She is presently a consultant for Novant Health's Artificial Intelligence and Innovation Institute. And on top of all that, Paula is a USA Triathlon Olympic Distance National Championship. So Paula, hopefully I covered some of the highlights, and I know we're going to elaborate on a lot of those items, but thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Mary Allison, and thanks, Dan, and the team at Packard Place. It's great to be here. It's an honor.
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to just get started and tell us a little bit more about yourself and give us some background on what experiences have led you where you are today, maybe elaborating on some of the things that I just mentioned.
Sure. Well, if you didn't just bore everybody already with my elaborate introduction, it might be interesting just to talk a little bit about how I joined the military and then made the transition to healthcare. Does that sound good? Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, for those of you who are old enough to remember the first Gulf War, I was in high school and remember I wanted to be an ambassador, but I remember watching, that war, and it was a shock and awe campaign. It was over in a couple of days. And I thought, as an American ambassador, of course, I thought I could get there someday, but if I'm going to serve my country as a diplomat, I need to understand the military and that instrument of power. So I decided to choose West Point as my college experience, which definitely not a normal college experience. But went off to join the Army, became an intelligence officer, as you said, Mary Allison, and had just an incredible journey traveling around the globe. My first stop was in Korea, and I actually had soldiers who were stationed on the demilitarized zone. And they were linguists. They spoke Korean, but also the North Korean accent. So our job was to listen in on North Korean communications and conduct electronic warfare. So basically jamming those communications, or disrupting, denying them, or sending whole new orders altogether. And of course, it was just training missions. But we had a lot of fun, and it felt pretty powerful as a second lieutenant. But I remember when I first got to that assignment, and I was pretty proud of myself, having gone to West Point and thinking I was on top of the world. And got to the DMZ and sat down with my platoon sergeant. So a seasoned professional who'd been there for 20 some years, been in Vietnam War. He knew what he was doing. And I'd been in the Army all of about 6 months at that point after West Point. And so I wanted to impress him. And there's a point to this story. So it was nighttime, and we sat down, and he said, "Lieutenant Kranz, look up at the sky. What do you see?" So I thought, I will pontificate for him and come up with some, intelligent academic answer. So I said, "Platoon sergeant, existentially, I know that God is great. The creator must, love us to give us this wonderful earth." And then I said, "Astronomically, it tells me we're in the southern hemisphere." And looking for another answer, I said, "Meteorologically, it looks like we're going to have a great day for training." And he just sat there. So I said, "What does it tell you, platoon sergeant?" And he said, "Lieutenant, you forgot to set up your tent. Get to work." So the point is, I thought I was pretty smart, showing up there and trying to show off. And I've learned since then in life to never try to outsmart anyone, because I can't. And it's always about a team of teams, and look to the people around you to help you grow, expand your horizons. And I've had many wonderful leaders in the military who've done that. And then fast forward to healthcare, same thing. So I can come back to that later, but had opportunities to travel, as you said, and live and work and deploy in about 70 countries, studied Arabic, French, and German, a little bit of Korean on the way. And after electronic warfare, got into undercover work, basically doing human intelligence, and worked with the FBI and Special Operations Command. So it was a wonderful military career. They don't pay you much, but you sure have a great adventure.
It certainly sounds like a pretty amazing adventure, and some of the things you've experienced, I'm sure, would make all of our heads spin. So what led you from working in intelligence for the Army, counterterrorism, to the world of health tech and founding what you're doing now with Medi-XR?
Well, I had a little pit stop along the way. I stopped to pursue graduate studies and run a counterterrorism center, as you mentioned. And all of that time I was working in the technology space. So if we're tracking terrorists and we're targeting them and we're doing interdiction operations, we obviously need digital platforms to do that. So there's been that kind of constant thread throughout my career. After academia, I started a little consulting firm and got into virtual reality. The purpose of the consulting firm was multifold, but the focus and the kind of bridge to this healthcare world was using virtual reality to teach empathy. So basically using this technology to put someone in another person's shoes and show them the day in the life. And I worked with a company called Wheelhouse Media here in Charlotte to produce some of those virtual reality experiences. And we got attention from the Smithsonian. They had an exhibit called Unconscious Bias, or Tolerance Within Us. We worked with various organizations around town, nonprofit organizations that had an empathy or unconscious bias mission. And as you can imagine, in the last few years, that focus has really taken off. So I realized there was great potential with the technology. So I pitched to my boss and CEO at the time that if I used my VA benefits and went to Oxford Business School, I would write a business thesis on how we could use virtual reality to help that company grow. And my business research basically showed that it was in the area of healthcare. So we started producing healthcare. I was very honored to attend Venture Prize and Fifth Third Bank's 53 Ideas kind of startup entrepreneurial program, and then launched Medi-XR. So kind of a circuitous route, but that's how life goes.
That is very cool. I'm sure most people on this call are familiar, but for those of you who are not, can you give us a quick lesson in what AR and VR technology is and some common applications for it that we may be familiar with?
Absolutely. So augmented reality, basically a person can see the real world. Most people are familiar with Pokemon, the game on your phone. So you see the park or the cemetery or your yard, but something is superimposed in it. Likewise, you can use, I have some accessories here, glasses that show you the real world, so I can see through these. But inside the glasses, there might be, in the healthcare case, a person's anatomy. So literally, we pull from a radiology image, a DICOM image. I might pull an image of your leg, your broken leg, or maybe your skull if you have a concussion. And I can literally overlay that on your body in front of me, and it can help with surgical guided procedures. So that's augmented reality. I always see the world around you. With virtual reality, a person is completely immersed in the headset. So I have another headset here. Most of you have probably seen Oculus Quest, has hand controllers, and basically you're completely immersed in this environment, and it might be for surgical pre-op training. So likewise, you can bring in an image of somebody's brain and give the headset to a patient and literally let them walk through their own brain and see their optical nerve and see the different parts of their cerebrum. So it's a fascinating way to conduct patient education. Likewise, a surgeon can conduct pre-operative training and just plan their precision route. Other use cases for virtual reality are, again, putting somebody in another person's shoes. So we've used it at Novant, or we've got some concept development, but basically to teach physicians how to better have end-of-life conversations. So it's very difficult, as you can imagine, to sit with a family and say, your child is about to die, and I'm here for you, and then walk them through that. So this is a way that a physician can do that safely and kind of get feedback from the system. So we have about 35 different use cases for virtual reality at Novant, which I can talk about later, but those are the differences between augmented and virtual reality.
Wow, that's really cool that you're kind of able to touch on the physical and scientific pieces as well as those emotional and kind of non-tangible pieces as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And just the adoption across the globe, frankly, is growing quickly. So it's exciting to see it happening here in Charlotte as well.
Yes, absolutely. And so this year, after you launched Medi-XR, you were picked up to consult and guide Novant Health's health tech innovation and technology initiatives. Can you tell us a little bit about how Novant Health is a leader in the health tech industry and what you and Novant are doing to advance the mission in Charlotte and across the nation?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it might also be helpful for the entrepreneurs and little startup CEOs who are probably listening to this to explain that I had a major pivot. So my startup was focused on creating virtual reality content, and we had an MVP, we had some projects and partners and clients in the pipeline, and then COVID hit. So I really thought, I'm going to keep going, a little engine that can. But I had some advisors that said, why don't you pivot and do what you're doing now, but build this new business, which is basically digital healthcare consulting. So fortunately, the chief digital and technology officer at Novant, she knew about the launch of Medi-XR. She said, why don't you bring Medi-XR to Novant? And we'll embed you on our digital health and engagement team so you can learn about the process and the people here, learn about some of our vision and values, and let's see where it goes. So it's been, I hate to say it, but for me, COVID has been a blessing in disguise. I don't think I would have had this opportunity. I certainly wouldn't have had Zoom calls with our executive team at the frequency I do as a kind of new startup consultant, right? And it's just helped me to grow professionally and personally and understand that even if I went back to Medi-XR's original mission, now I know how the inside of a hospital works, how they do budgeting, how they pick vendors to work with. And so I hope to bring that to this community as well. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But at Novant, we have been focused on just virtual care expansion in every way. COVID has accelerated that, of course, because people don't want to come into the hospital. We kind of stopped some of our elective procedures, but of course, hospitals need to generate income. So we've had to adapt and find different ways to reach our patients. So I have a little slide I can try to pull up here, if that's okay. And it talks about, here we go. Talks about some of these cool innovations. Can you see this?
I can.
Hope
yes, it looks like I'm seeing in the chat. We can see it.
Okay, let me make it a little bigger. So I thought I'd outline just examples of some of the really cool things we're doing. Novant has a mission to partner with strategic corporations, but not typical healthcare corporations. So one is Microsoft. Other are some organizations that might be going to the moon soon, and so forth. And so I've been really fortunate to be given basically a liaison or ambassador role to those strategic organizations to see how we can partner in this digital health space. So one of them is Microsoft. Microsoft selected Novant as an iconic AI partner. And basically, everyone, not everyone, but big corporations are after data, right? We all know data is gold right now. And healthcare organizations sit on a lot of patient data. And we protect it, of course, and I've never seen as much security, even in the military, frankly, with patient data. But if you remove that patient data and you do some modeling, you can come up with these predictive models that help provide better care. So in this first little image, I have one of our initiatives, which is a telemetry optimization. So I don't want to bore you with details. I could geek out about it. But another one that might be interesting to this group is that we're creating a model with Microsoft to predict opioid abuse and basic substance abuse. Wow. And it's really powerful. So we look at historical data over the last years of people who've overdosed or had addiction issues, and we try to predict it before we even prescribe it. So it's really powerful. As Novant is expanding to the eastern part of the state where opioid abuse is really bad, it's very exciting for us to bring this to that population. Second is in XR healthcare. So XR includes augmented and virtual reality. And I mentioned a few of the use cases, but I'll dive into a few more. So for augmented reality, everybody probably uses Google Maps or some kind of wayfinding on their phone. But if you're like me, you've possibly been lost in a major hospital as well. Hospitals are big labyrinths, and knowing how to get where you're going is confusing for some people. So using augmented reality to basically guide a person through a building is one application. Likewise, we're using augmented reality. Most of this stuff is in proposal phase, but for patient engagement. So I used the Pokemon example earlier, but imagine holding up your phone and hitting some QR code or scanning some QR code and a brain pops up. And now I can use a phone or an iPad or some device to explain to my patient, this is what your brain looks like. This is the anatomy of whatever we're going to work with. I sometimes use the demos we have for my kids' education. And then virtual reality, of course, I've discussed a couple of those use cases, but we're using it for exciting patient care as well, including teaching kids with social anxiety or even behavior health disorders to have better social skills in the headsets. So the headset is a safe place for a child with autism, for example, to practice speaking and using manners with a non-threatening panda or some kind of cartoon anime. So it's really exciting to see how VR is changing lives. And these are FDA-approved games, if you will. The third thing I have listed, if you can see it, is 3D printing. So this to me is just revolutionary. Imagine if you've had a knee replacement or hip replacement. Basically, the process is they pick 5 knees out of a drawer. I'm simplifying this, basically, and they try to pick the one that fits best after they open up your knee. And of course, there's some pretty intelligent science behind it, but it's also a little there's room for improvement. Let me say that. So we're exploring a process where we might pull a DICOM image of a bone or a structure and create a personalized new knee or personalized hip. So you can see those images right there. Those are of a humeral head in the shoulder, and I've actually got them here, if you can see. I don't know if that's in sight, but we worked with a strategic partner locally just to do a kind of proof of concept and print some of these bones, basically for pre-operative training. It's really exciting, but that's the run phase. The crawl phase with 3D printing is printing a cast or a prosthetic or maybe a scoliosis brace, but of course it's again personalized, which is really exciting. And I think all of this digital stuff is trying to provide a much more personalized experience in healthcare. I'll go to the fourth one, but I'll stop there for a second. Do you have anything to interject, Mary Allison? I can talk about
no, it's just fascinating. I had no idea, like I'm sure many people on this call had no idea that Novant was really this innovative and heading up this type of innovation for the entire industry. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so exciting and it's so much fun to be part of it. I love my job. I think I have the best job at Novant too. So the fourth category is basically virtual care expansion. And I think some of you who are in healthcare might be shocked to learn this. I know as a person who's not from healthcare, I was, and then shocked when I learned it on our team. But before COVID, we had only about 250 virtual visits or telehealth calls a week. And in April, we had 7,000 a day. And those numbers have basically kind of maintained as people adopt this new behavior. And frankly, as a mom of 2 kids, I'm really happy to not have to drive to their school, bring them back to the pediatrician, drive them to school, and then bring them back home again. So it saves parents time, it saves physicians time, and basically I think enhances the ability to provide care. So when we're not doing virtual visits, we're looking at ways to connect devices. So imagine having a sock that can predict if you have poor circulation, if you have diabetes, for example, or if you're in a wheelchair and you're sitting too long and starting to get injuries to your skin. The mat on the wheelchair can basically send a text to you to say, move a little, just shift left or right. We're looking at EKG devices that we can put on home-based cardiac patients so they can exercise safely after an intervention. And that information is transmitted in real time to the doctor or clinical team so they can make sure that exercise at home is safe. Because right now, those cardiac patients aren't able to come in. That means they have less chance of survival after a cardiac arrest or a heart intervention. There's some other really cool things in this area that Novant's about to announce, but basically reading every possible vital sign, reading brain waves even, and predicting that, Paula, you're about to crave a glass of wine, and then sending me a text message to say, maybe you should go for a walk instead. So imagine that the power of this technology and just harnessing the Internet of Things. And it's now being called the Internet of Me from a patient point of view. So the last thing I have here is something Novant started. Much of this has been started before I came there, obviously, but using drones to deliver just-in-time products. So we started with a proof of concept of delivering PPE. Ultimately, the goal is to deliver things like transplant items, right? So what if we need to get an eyeball or some organ up to UVA, they're a partner hospital of us, and it needs to happen, in an hour, or the body part won't make it. Sorry for my lack of healthcare technical talk, but the technology is one way to get it there. We're also potentially delivering pharmaceuticals to home, so you don't have to come into a clinic space and so forth. So this is really exciting. Let me shut that off for a second, and I'll come back to you, Mary Allison. So sorry that was long-winded, but just some really cool, exciting things going on, and it's so much fun.
No, that's fantastic. And I think so many people who are part of Packard Place and attend these calls, and just people in the Charlotte startup and tech community, are going to hear that and just naturally think that this type of innovation in healthcare is going to lead to so many other opportunities for complementary businesses. What opportunities do you see health tech creating for both startups and mature companies in Charlotte to capitalize on?
Yes, so I'm going to show another slide really quickly. So if you're in the artificial intelligence world, these are some of the really cool AI predictive models we've been in the process of creating, have created and launched, or are kind of in our pipeline greenfield. And it's everything from payment, and supply prediction, if you will, to fetal heart rate monitoring. So mom will know if anything's going on with her child, to basically managing something called IQ. So managing the turnover in the OR and making sure it's efficient, and that you and I don't have to wait for an hour if somebody in the clinic is running behind. We've got the telemetry optimization. So lots of cool opportunities. And I share this because Novant has something called experimentation as a service. So, SaaS, software as a service, it's XaaS. I'm not sure how to properly pronounce it yet. We're all trying to figure that out. But we pride ourselves in working with startups. So it should be about a Series A or so, right? You have got proof of concept, you've had your MVP, you may have one or two other clients, but you want to grow. So Novant's goal is to partner with some of these health tech startups, and let's build something together, maybe have a joint venture, or, just give it to us for a reasonable rate. So we have it, so we can provide better patient care. And then you go launch and become a billionaire on your own. So the other really exciting thing, we haven't officially announced yet, but my boss said I could talk about it, is we are creating an innovation center of excellence. And it is going to support the health tech community in Charlotte and across the region, basically across the globe. So it's meant to attract talent. It's meant to have a pool of funds so that if we want to create a real quick AI model to prevent, or predict suicide and maybe offer behavioral health, that's a big issue right now, we can do these really fast proofs of concept and not lean on our team, which is providing remarkable care every day, right? And really needs to stay focused on that mission. It can also be a place where we showcase some of our innovation. Like you can come in and see what a 3D printer looks like and print your your elbow, whatever, your thumb, if you want to hitchhike. So it's going to be a really cool innovation center, but it's not only to advance our mission, but to support the ecosystem that's growing in Charlotte through Cheetah, the Carolina Health Innovation and Tech Alliance, through Launch Tower, through Health Tech Women, and probably a lot of my peers and friends are watching tonight. But its goal is to kind of support the whole ecosystem. So reach out if I can help.
Yes, that's fantastic. I know I'm sure a lot of people who are going to be reaching out about that, and people who may already be interested or kind of venturing into the health tech space as well. So kind of shifting back into your time in the military and how that's kind of transferred into your life as an entrepreneur now. How do you feel like your time as an Army intelligence officer shaped who you are today as an entrepreneur? And how do you think it is important, and how can we support military veterans in the startup and entrepreneurship community as a whole?
Well, I think, thank you for asking that. I think supporting veterans is incredibly important. Dan mentioned earlier supporting minority startups, and I think I'd include veterans in that. We're less than 0.05% of the population, so not a lot of us, although Charlotte has a pretty good size group, and we have Bunker Labs here, which supports veteran entrepreneurs. So I think most of us in the military have learned the importance of teamwork. I remember getting this guidance once, and it was basically, in the absence of orders, figure out what should be done and do it. And you have to think like that when you're in a war zone and you don't have connectivity to your commander, or it's such a fluid, nebulous situation. You have to rely on your training to get it done. So while I'm fighting a different enemy now in healthcare, it's disease. My boss kind of supports that same culture. There aren't big guardrails. I mean, she knows that's my personality, so she's like, go and conquer the mountain and come back and tell me when you've done it. Go and find problems and then find solutions. And that's the way military, I think, are generally speaking used to operating. So healthcare has been a fun environment, an easy transition for me in that regard. I think it's interesting. I pulled some stats from Bunker Labs. Just the fact that that veteran startups and veteran entrepreneurs through Bunker Labs have generated $99 million in capital, they've raised $99 million in capital, generated $135 million in revenue, and that's just in the last few years since Bunker Labs has launched. So I think veteran entrepreneurs are quite tenacious and team players, and lots of great things to say about my colleagues, but I would be happy to point people towards Bunker Labs if they want to learn more about the veteran community.
Yes, absolutely. Bunker Labs is a fantastic organization as well that I know you're involved in. So outside of that, you've also excelled in spaces that have traditionally been very male-centric. You're graduating from West Point, serving as an officer in the Army, advising in counterterrorism efforts, and now starting a technology and innovation company. Can you touch on how being a woman has affected or shaped your experiences so far?
Well, I grew up with two brothers who used to torture me, like most big brothers do. And that was probably also part of the reason I joined the military. So I think I was used to being around boys. I loved West Point because I was an athlete growing up. And so I felt challenged around the women as well, but the male athletes there especially. And I guess it's just become normal. So when I came to healthcare, I think we're about 50% women, and it's kind of shocking. But I will say that maybe I had some misconceptions in mind about working with women, because it's been wonderful. And I say bloom where you're planted. If you're a woman who finds herself in a men's world, represent well, and do the best you can do, but find a peer network and even peer mentors, and of course senior mentors to kind of help you find your way if it's challenging. And I love serving as a mentor. So if there's anybody out there who needs a kind of a woman to bounce things off, I'm happy to do so. But yeah, no complaints.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's really kind of why I started my podcast as well, where I just talk to women of all diverse backgrounds and experiences, because I think as women, it's so important to support and uplift other women. And, men as well, obviously play a huge role in supporting and uplifting future female leaders in all roles and industries. So I'm glad that you kind of touched on that, connecting with mentors and making sure you kind of build a great community around yourself as well. One term that you had mentioned previously in a conversation that we had was being industry agnostic. Can you explain what industry agnostic means and how someone can position themselves to be industry agnostic in order to evolve or, word of the year, pivot in their career or business with the changing needs of the world?
Yeah, I'd say if you're a leader and you're trying to be industry agnostic, there's kind of 4 concepts. So you have to get the big idea right. In counterinsurgency, that was, we're not fighting a conventional war, it's a different type of war. In healthcare, the big idea is we want to create this virtual expansion of care, right? So all the ways we can do that, I mentioned some of those earlier. So that's number 1, get the big idea right. Number 2, you have to communicate it, because if the whole team doesn't know where we're going, they're going to wander off down this street and that street and not really align their work and their energy towards what the big idea is. And then 3rd, you kind of have to iterate. So nobody ever gets it right the first time, rarely. And as an organization, especially, you have to iterate till you get closer to the right solution, I think. And then, of course, you have to institutionalize the knowledge. So I've just found those are basic principles that kind of guide me. They don't have to do with any industry, obviously. But the other thing I'd like to say is when you're looking for problems, you need to think about human-centered design solutions. So instead of coming with a solution or a cool vendor or let's try to fit this, I always look for a problem first. And I think if you're a doctor, if you're an IT specialist, if you're a babysitter, whatever, what are the problems you're trying to solve? How are you trying to add value? And those are just a couple of things. I know we're out of time, but I value myself in kind of being a jack of all trades. Maybe it hasn't served me so well in some people's eyes, but I wouldn't change a single thing about my fun career. It's been rewarding. And most of all, it's always been about service. And I love that.
That's awesome. Sticking true to those kind of core principles and the things that make you light up and that you're passionate about. Exactly. That's fantastic. Well, yes, like you said, we could, I feel like, talk for hours. But just to wrap up, where can people connect with you and find out more about Medi-XR?
Absolutely. I'd love to hear from anyone. I think LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. I'm pretty good about keeping up with messages there. So it's just Paula-Kranz.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paula. This was an awesome conversation.
Appreciate you. Thanks for what you're doing. And thanks to Dan and Packard Place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Paula, for being with us. She also has a birthday celebration. Her birthday was technically last week, but she's going out with friends and juggled that to be here with us tonight. So it's really awesome. So thank you, Paula, for that. Mary Allison, fantastic job in the conversation. I know that conversation could go on for an hour, right? Easily, and you wouldn't even scratch the surface. But I guess that's part of the point of introducing the community to new people and kind of exposing folks to what's out there. So I thought that was just great. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can share my screen for just another second to get us into our networking, which is what's going to happen next. Let me see if that will pull up. Yeah, there we go. That's what we just finished, obviously. And what we're going to do next is go into Remo's networking mode. So it feels very different than this. This is like a Zoom webinar, as I said. This screen you're going to see, you're seeing now, is about what you're going to see in the Zoom networking room. It looks like a conference boardroom or ballroom where there's tables set up if you're at lunch. And you'll notice that there's an icon for you at a table. And you literally just move from table to table by double-clicking on the table, so you control where you go in this networking environment, which is really kind of cool. You'll also notice at the bottom, there's a button for mic on and camera on. You have to turn your camera and mic on. It defaults to having you off. Otherwise, you're sitting at the table and you're kind of being a fly on the wall, and no one can totally tell you're there. When you turn your camera on and your mic on, then you'll be engaged in the table conversation. There's also a limit of around 6 people per table, so a table can be full. But hopefully you guys can spread around, get an opportunity to talk to people, say hello, meet some people that you haven't met before, discuss kind of your observations and thoughts from tonight's Kegside Chat. And we'd love to see you stay with us and hang around and do some networking. Paula may have to run, but she might be able to hang with us for just a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and put us all into that breakout room or that kind of networking session here in just 1 second. And then also we'll post in the general chat if we have it tonight. We may not. But it's just a survey, getting feedback on what you thought of tonight's event. But either way, thank you for being with us and enjoy the networking. I thought that was a great conversation. Looking forward to talking to everyone at the table. So here we go.